Our next speaker is Kevin Anderson from Anderson and Yamada, and he's going to talk to us this morning, maybe this afternoon too, Kevin, I don't know.
Hopefully not.
About sleep apnea and driver coercion from the legal perspective. So, Kevin, here's the pointer. Thank you very much. I'll give you about 5 minutes.
About 5 minutes?
When
oh,
5
morning.
minutes.
Oh, okay. I was going to say 5 minutes. That's good. If I just talk without a microphone, is everybody good hearing me in the back? I'm told I'm pretty loud. So, I want to thank Skip and Dave for inviting me to share. They do a lot for the industry, keeping us all informed of new developments, and hopefully I can add some good information to this. I also love coming to Skip's events simply because they're here at the Monarch, which gives me flashbacks. I took the bar exam here. So, good memories. Thanks, Skip. So, of course, I'm a lawyer. Everything needs a disclaimer. And as you kind of heard at the end of Dr. Wilbur's presentation, there is some discretion here when it comes to sleep apnea. Who's she going to send to get a sleep test? Whether she has to. What falls in? Some of that discretion is caused by the government itself. FMCSA has said some things, taken it back. I have some, and so it's kind of brought on by the FMCSA too. I have some fun at the government's expense during this presentation. Hopefully Warren and Jesse don't hold that against me or my clients in the future. So there are a lot of misconceptions about, or actually, sorry, let's start out with what is sleep apnea. Most of you probably know Dr. Wilbur gave a nice little description of what it is, but here, this is participatory, so get ready to hold your breath, okay? Everybody hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, start. Okay, you can breathe. It's holding your breath for 10 seconds. It's not very comfortable or nice to do when just here on a normal day. But at night, if you have sleep apnea, you may be stopping breathing like that for up to 10 seconds, up to 400 times a night. Now, if that's happening at night, obviously it's going to impact your sleep in your restful state. Back in 2002, there was a University of Pennsylvania study done not only by the FMCSA, but also by ATRI, which is part of the ATA, sponsored by them. But it found that that 28% of drivers, almost a third, have some form of mild to severe sleep apnea. Okay? Everybody here, every motor carrier that I know, every industry group that I know wants us to be safe on the roads. It's our workplace, okay? We don't want to go out there and be dangerous. So while there's a lot of contention over what the rules should be, how we should employ them, what you should be doing as a motor carrier, the ultimate goal, keep in mind, is to be safe, okay? Everybody wants to be safe. So misconceptions about the rule. Dr. Wilbur did a good job of kind of explaining, she may send people based on multiple factors, and she has the right to do that. But there are some drivers are being told, well, everybody has to be tested for sleep apnea. No, not true. Some are saying, well, if you have a BMI over 30 or 35 or a neck over 17, I'm going to send you, or you have to be tested. Well, no, not true. Some organizations are adding to this, so it's one of those kind of self-serving. They may be saying, oh yeah, you need to come to our place to get a sleep test done, see if you have sleep apnea. Nah, not true. Okay, so why are there so many misconceptions? Probably the primary reason why there's so many misconceptions is because the FMCSA are hard workers and they are not taking Mr. Ron Swanson's advice. Okay? Our government has been doing a lot in this realm. And so it actually starts back prior to 2000, or prior to 2008. It actually goes back to 2000. But 2008 is when it really gets going. In 2000 is when when the FMCSA issued their initial criteria for interpreting the guidance to medical examiners concerning physical qualifications. But then in 2008, you have the Medical Review Board recommend that you require all drivers to be screened for sleep apnea. So right here is where one misconception comes in, but that's just a recommendation. 2008, similarly, just a couple months later, a health panel recommended that, well, to get your medical certification, it'll be conditional based on if you're over a certain BMI. Once again, a recommendation, no effect of law. And then in 2010, the ATA, FMCSA, and the American Sleep Apnea Association, they co-sponsor this National Sleep Apnea and Trucking Conference. Lots of information's going out, but still no definitive rules and regulations. So it keeps going. In April, this is one of those where FMCSA kind of really stuck their foot in their mouths. They published in the Federal Registry a proposed regulatory guidance for sleep apnea and a request for comment. Oops, weren't supposed to do that. They actually said it was a clerical error, was never supposed to actually be published. They retracted that guidance, okay? Now, that guidance actually gave out certain things like the BMI, like how many events per night constitute severe and when you should do this. And during my research for this, pulling up things, I pulled up a medical examiner's website, and it says certified CDL medical exam. And it goes through some background, but then it says, so what is the guidance that is in place? And they say, well, the definition of sleep apnea is 30 events per night and neck circumference of over 17 for males or over 16 for females. This guidance is not in place. So even, I didn't go back and see if this person is actually on the registry board, but it just kind of gives you an idea that there is misinformation out there. So finally, there's all this misinformation. So in 2013, Congress actually passes a law.
High wind report.
What?
We have a high wind report.
Oh. So in 2013, Congress actually passes a law saying, look, FMCSA, you can't use guidance to work on sleep apnea. You're going to actually have to do a full rule-making procedure and to address sleep apnea testing and screening. President signs it. Great, hooray, no more confusion, right? Yeah. So that's in 2013. In January of 2015, the ATA, still some confusion going around. Nobody knows what's going on. So ATA actually raises with Congress saying, look, there's a lot of confusion. Will you come out and actually request that the FMCSA clarify that there are no rules and regulations and that this guidance isn't there. We only have recommendations and it doesn't have to be done. So thank you, FMCSA. In January 2015 of last year, they published their bulletin. No longer guidance, no longer recommendations. So they think they're within the law. It's a bulletin. But essentially, if you read the bulletin, it's essentially them saying, Dr. Wilbur, you really, really need to be screening for this. If you have any concerns about someone having sleep apnea, you should be screening for this. In the language there is just, it's not very much discretionary. It's not very much do what you think is right. It's we have guidelines, even though we don't have guidelines, and you should be abiding by them. So it causes even more issues, okay? So the question becomes, so what is the law? What's the law that's applicable here? And it's very clear, CFR 349, 391, whatever. It says a person is physically qualified to drive a commercial motor vehicle if that person has no established medical history or clinical diagnosis of respiratory dysfunction likely to interfere with his or her ability to control and drive a commercial motor vehicle safely. All right. I didn't see sleep apnea referenced in there specifically. It does say respiratory dysfunction. Sleep apnea since 2000, pretty much since they've been giving out any information on this, sleep apnea is considered part of a respiratory dysfunction. However, there's a lot of discretion. This is the law, but as we've discussed, there's a lot of discretion given in these recommendations, the guidance that has been issued and pulled back. So how is a medical doctor, a medical examiner, supposed to look at all of these things together? And the FMCSA does have a statement on this in its examiner's handbook. And it says, as a medical examiner, it is important for you to distinguish between medical standards and medical guidelines. Regulations and standards are laws and must be followed, whereas guidelines such as advisory criteria and medical conference reports are recommendations. While not law, the guidelines are intended as best practices for medical examinations. As you can see, they're not really clarifying the situation. But in defense of medical examiners and Dr. Wilbur, here's the deal. When they sign off on a medical card, they are saying that the driver is medically fit to drive a commercial motor vehicle, and they can be held responsible if that's not true. Therefore, in Dr. Wilbur's expert opinion, if she thinks you may have sleep apnea, she's going to get it tested. Now the question is, where do you draw the line? All right. There's a lot of discretion here. So what do you do as a motor carrier? What are you going to do? All right. There are the regulations also apply to you. You need to make sure that you cannot require or permit a driver to operate if the driver has a condition, including sleep apnea, that would affect his or her ability to safely operate the vehicle. Okay. You have an obligation here too. So if a driver is coming to you and they flat out say, I have sleep apnea or something along those lines, you're going to have to do something, most likely send them to your doctor to get them cleared. Make sure that they are using their CPAP machine, okay? But the other question is, what if you just have a suspicion? What if your driver is severely overweight, has a large neck, seems tired all the time? What are you going to do? Are you going to send them for a sleep test? Well, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Neither are you. Well, and so the question is, if you start setting your own standards, okay, which you can do, but if you start setting your own standards, it's a question of why did you set your standards there? If you say, I'm going to send my drivers over 35 BMI for sleep testing, okay, why'd you pick 35? Why not 40? Why not 30? Why not 25? These are questions plaintiffs' attorneys are going to start asking, okay, if you set your own regulation or your own rules, okay? And you don't have to diagnose this, okay? You know, reasonable suspicion testing, if you think someone's drunk, if they come in, hop out of their truck, and they smell like alcohol and booze and are swerving, well, you have a responsibility there to follow up on that and to get them tested. There's no such thing, no such regulation with sleep apnea, okay? So in my view, there are two options, okay? You can simply fall back on your medical doctors, their medical certifications, okay? You send in your drivers when they need to be tested, they're tested, okay? You leave it up to your doctors to determine whether or not they are medically certifiable, and if they are, they're good to go. And if they're not, then you need to follow up. The other option is you're going to test every driver no matter what, even if they're 22 years old, peak health, no problems, weigh 150 pounds, healthy. You're going to test them too. So those are your options. Okay, go all the way, one or the other. I would rely on your doctors, okay? because sending everybody to get tested is going to be extremely expensive. Okay. Then the other question is, you're paying for the testing, so if it comes back positive, are you going to pay for the CPAP and everything else going forward? I don't know. Doctor shopping. So part of this discretion is some doctors and some medical examiners will simply say, I'm sending everyone to have a sleep test. Most of the carriers that I talk to are not very happy with that decision because it raises costs, it cuts out a lot of people from their potential driver pool. So they don't like that. So they start looking for other medical examiners that won't send their drivers for testing. Now, for carriers that have numerous medical examiners that they use, this isn't that big of a deal. But if you have a long-term established relationship with a medical examiner, and all of a sudden they start sending people to get tested, and you all of a sudden decide to change, that could be a problem. Because if someone is fatigued and gets into a crash, you can certainly bet that they're going to come back and ask you, well, were they tested for sleep apnea? No. Why not? My doctor said no. Oh, what doctor do you use? This doctor. But you had been using this doctor. Why'd you change? Well, I didn't want to send them for sleep apnea. That can get expensive. You're digging yourself a hole. So be careful with doctor shopping. Not only that, but with the registry now, doctor shopping is going to be a lot harder to do. So drivers actually with sleep apnea that either come out and say, yes, I have sleep apnea, or they're sent for testing and they're determined to have sleep apnea. Pretty much all sleep apnea cases can be treated properly with a CPAP. And once it's successfully treated, they can get they can be medically qualified. And they're going to need a medical release opinion letter or some sort of documentation from their treating physician. This wouldn't be the medical examiner. This would be something they take to the medical examiner from their treating physician that explains, been diagnosed, it's under control, being treated, I meet this requirement. And they have to continue to be treated for it. And Dr. Wilbur touched on this. Now, once again, this goes back to the recommendations versus rules and laws. The recommendations are if they do have sleep apnea, they can be treated in the following manners to get their car. If it's mild to moderate and they have no daytime sleepiness, then they don't need to be treated with a CPAP. If they have moderate to severe, as Dr. Wilbur said, 4 hours per day on at least 70% of the days. Once again, rules and regulations, you can't. Is it 5? I thought it was 4.
It's 4.
Oh, okay. So 5 minutes. Thank you. I was like, you threw me off there, Steve. I was like, really? Okay. No, 4 hours. So 4 hours per day. But once again, these are recommendations. You may find a doctor that will do less than this. I highly doubt that because that's just putting themselves on the line. But you could actually request more. Okay? You could say, well, you need to use it at least 6 hours a day and at least 80% of the time. Once again, I wouldn't do that. All of a sudden, you're the doctor, you're the medical expert. Why'd you set it there? Not only that, but as Skip mentioned, driver coercion. How is that going to play into this? It's a new rule. It's just going into effect. We're going to have to see how it plays in, which is another one of those reasons why I have ideas, but I wouldn't be putting in too many requests of your drivers, especially with the driver coercion rule, but leave it to the government to come up with a rule. Leave it to the doctors to certify people. So HIPAA, this kind of plays in. You're talking about medical records and getting information. Here's my advice to you. Get as little medical information as you can to do what you need to do. You need a medical card, okay? You need to make sure that they can operate a CMV. So get that medical card. You may get the long form, that's all right. If you get any of this information, keep it pretty much under lock and key. Don't disseminate it without the driver's authorization or, court order or to the government because they may request that. So that's just my recommendation on that is stay away as much as possible. So coming soon, hey, yay! We are getting a rule on this allegedly. So December 15th, the FMCSA sent an advance notice of proposed rulemaking regarding sleep apnea testing and treatment to OMB. They were saying, hey, we're going to get it published in the Federal Register by the end of the year in 2015. We'll start taking comments, and comments will close early February. They got 2 days to publish it by January, okay? So they had moved it to January with comments going to March. It still hasn't come. Maybe Warren knows where we're at with this. Who knows? Lost in government buildings at the OMB. But with that said, this initial advance notice of proposed rulemaking, it's really a request for data. The government needs data in order to come up with the rule. So they'll have kind of an initial rule saying, this is what we're thinking of doing, but we need more data, more feedback from the carriers on how to do this. So my suggestion to you, because if they put in mandatory testing of all drivers, the cost is going to fall on you, okay? So when this proposed rule comes out, give them the data. Tell them how much it's going to cost your company. Tell them how that's going to cut into your profits, into your ability to add more drivers, to add more jobs to the economy. That's what you need to comment on, okay? Rants aren't really helpful, but say, look, bottom line, it's going to cost me $3,000 per driver. I have 10 drivers, that's $30,000. I'm not going to be able to hire a new driver and add to this economy if this goes in, and we need some sort of limitations on it. So if you have questions, I'm more than willing to attempt to answer them. Yes?
You said something about the carrier paying for the sleep apnea testing.
You don't, once again, there's no right, you don't have to, okay? But here's the deal. Most of y'all are struggling to find drivers to begin with. We have a driver shortage. Now let me tell you, if they're looking for a job and all of a sudden they need to get a sleep test and you say, I'm not paying for your sleep apnea test, you go get that. That's cost of doing business. Go spend your $3,000 to get the test done. Yet, ABC Trucking down the road says, we'll pay for your testing. Guess who's getting all the good drivers, even if they have sleep apnea? They are.
We have one of those clinics that use the 35 and 17 rule.
Okay.
And they're sending drivers in like crazy.
Exactly.
Stars, everybody.
Yeah.
And the sleep apnea, the sleep clinics are out about 60 days right now to even get an appointment. But our insurance, their insurance that we pay for, covers their sleep testing.
Okay.
So we're not covering it. I just
right. And it's one of those. It's also you're paying for the insurance and you keep sending all these people. What's going to happen to your premiums? So somehow or another, you pay for it. So that's why it's important to comment on the rule coming out. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This isn't necessarily related to sleep apnea, but we get hit with a lot of calls from DERs and companies who don't know what to do. So their drivers have current med cards, they've been qualified, fit to drive, but then sometime after they've gotten the new med card, they have a medical health status change. So maybe they've been diagnosed with diabetes and now they're on an insulin regimen, or they've been diagnosed with skin cancer or something. So they've had a medical status change. So the number one question we get is, one scenario, the driver shares that new medical status with their employer. And the question is, do they automatically send them in for a new certified medical exam? Or the second scenario, the driver doesn't share that medical status information, and so the employer doesn't know that their status has changed and now they're on an insulin regimen or something, and what is their liability?
Okay.
So
Well,
how do you handle that?
The second part of the question. If they don't tell you, if it doesn't come to your attention, there's not much you can do. Because, I mean, if you're going around asking each of your drivers, hey, I noticed you were something, I don't know, a little sluggish, or you need blood sugar regulation, you're on insulin, you go, whoa, you are going to get sued right off the bat because all of a sudden you're asking about medical status. You have issues there. Now, if they bring it to your attention, remember the duty to put safe drivers on the road is yours. So that raises a much more interesting
So the
question,
lack of
but-
knowledge eliminates the risk of liability?
Oh, heck no, this is America. You can be sued for anything, man. God bless America. But you have a very good defense there. I didn't know. I can't go ask them this. There are reasons why you can't know. And that's why it's a much more interesting question. Well, what if they tell you? You can, and I couldn't give you an off the